Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back to a weekend here. It is the Earthmaster on this end, about 10:57 a.m. here, California time, Saturday, March 23rd, 2024. Latest activity here on the globe. Looks like a 1.5 into the California area. We'll check that out here in just a little bit. Right now, I want to cover the space weather activity that's going on. I want to show you guys the flaring activity from yesterday. I'm going to rewind this just a little bit here and show you guys the X flare. And the roughly an M flare popped off from this area as well at about the same time. Let's check this out. This is from yesterday. You'll see the two bright regions up here. There we go. Look at that. One large X flare and then a very large M flare as well from the southern sunspot there on the screen. Let me pause this right about, let's see, where'd we go here? I'm going to show you guys because it's quite an impressive image and quite rare to see two large flares like that Earth directed right there. Look at that. There's the X flare roughly at the same time as that X flare. We've seen a pretty large M flare down here as well. Now the CME that was produced is coming off of this X flare, and it does look quite impressive. The Space Weather Prediction Center folks here have put out a modeled imagery of the arrival of the CME, which is expected here in a couple days. Now, put this into motion. The sun is going to be in the yellow, obviously, Earth in the green. Here is the plasma density. Look at the density. They're fairly large. And on the bottom is the expected velocity, far as the speed of this plasma cloud. Now, it was a full halo CME, and it does look like we'll get a decent hit here from that CME. Not a full potential from this CME that hit, or CME that was produced yesterday, but we are getting a pretty decent opportunity here to maybe see some auroras, a G2, G3 class storm possible as this arrives about the 25th here, it looks like. Let me pause this and see exactly when this will hit. Looks like about 3:25:03 on the UTC time. Again, this could be a G2, G3 class storm as indicated. Let me go back here, see what I did. For some reason I can't. There we go. So it looks like here, 3:25 G2 class storm. I doubt that will miss us, so we're probably going to get a decent hit from that, and not expecting anything, catastrophic wise, but a G2, G3 class storm. You can see auroras fairly low into the middle latitude areas. Now, just for the G2, you can see them down to about New York and Idaho in terms of the auroras, typically at 55 on the geomagnetic latitude lines there. So we'll continue to watch that and report back on that. Definitely decent proton event coming in right now. Look at these protons that were sent to us from these large CMEs. Watch this. There we go. And then following that, you'll get these little, they look like shooting stars, but those are all the charged protons being blasted at the planet that is currently creating let me see here what we got. Well, radio blackout there across the polar regions. So this does look like we're seeing some type of radiation storm up there across the upper levels and the lower levels of the planet. Very nice. I mean, look at that. Goodness. Density is way up there in terms of these protons. We're also currently flaring with a bunch of M flares. Let me show you guys these M flares right now. Look at that. There's our X flare from yesterday, X1.1, X1.12 to be exact. We have seen about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 8 or 9 more M flares since that X flare yesterday. We are crackling and basically sizzling with all this M flare activity. And that is coming off of a giant sunspot here, 3615. 3614 here is the culprit of the X flare yesterday, the X 1.1, and also a few weeks back was the source of the strongest X flare this solar cycle. This is the second time the sunspot has come back around the bend. Back then it was known as 3590, a different name but same old sunspot. This time it provided us with a massive halo CME, and we'll get that here in a couple days. Look at this sunspot here. That is quite the quite impressive. I can't say I've seen anything like this in quite a while. Look at the visible disk. That is a massive sunspot. There's so many different cores in here that it's that we should be seeing X flares left and right potentially with this sunspot. That's 3615. And that is the one that's sizzling here with the M flare activity right now. It's currently flaring, it looks like, with some C flare activity. But generally, we were way up there in the M flare category pretty much most of the morning there. Let's go ahead and look at this once again. 3615 is the big sunspot. It is directly facing Earth. It is almost at the equator area here across the sun center disk. This, this couldn't be more perfectly lined up. If this were to produce a massive CME, it would obviously be 100% Earth directed. So that's just crazy looking. So many different little areas in here of different colors indicating super complex structure within that sunspot. So we're keeping an eye on that one very closely. 3615. There's a couple more behind it. These really don't look as impressive, but they're still there. And another one way out here on the northeastern limb of the sun. So we're looking at some big time potential today of seeing some further X flaring taking place. There's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the counted M flares from 3615 overnight. But, if you look at some of these flares here, there's one there. There's a second one. There's a third one that reached a low-grade M flare. Each one of these spikes on the graph here is a flare. So there's probably, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 flares, M flares, that has taken place here since the X flare yesterday. So things are really crackling. They're really sizzling. I like that word sizzling because I can't think of a better word for this sunspot right now, 3615. We do have an elevated threat for an X flare at 30%. Proton event, obviously, with that giant CME yesterday, shot off a lot of charged protons that will be affecting the Earth here for a little while. And potentially about the same time as, when we get the CME here in a couple days, we could still be having this proton event take place. So be interesting to see what happens as far as the sightings of auroras down into the middle latitudes. 80% chance for an M flare, C flare at 99% chance. So things are up there. I don't think it can get, obviously it can get, more complex. But this is quite elevated. I mean, we go from having a very quiet sun for, I don't know, it was probably, about a week or so, maybe 10 days of just very quiet conditions to, boom, a lot of activity stirring up out here. A lot. So we'll continue to watch that. There's really no major auroras right now, not until the 25th. It doesn't look like Kevin's updated. Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's going to be higher than that. I don't think Kevin's updated this yet in terms of the potential auroras. But as we've seen here on the... Let's go back to this one page. As we've seen here on the Space Weather Prediction Center, they're calling for a G2 class storm, G3 class storm category, 24th to 25th. So that's kind of a big deal. G3 storm probability. Now that's on the 25th, UTC time. Potential issues could pop up. Voltage corrections may be required across power systems. There could be some triggered alerts and alarms on certain protection devices there across the power grids and whatnot. Spacecraft operations, surface charging may occur on satellite components. Drag may increase on low Earth orbit satellites. But we've seen a G3 storm here recently. It's a couple months back here. But, there's no threat here to us on the surface. Mostly just up there to the satellites and everything outside of the of our magnetic field. And that's expected there on the 25th. We'll keep an eye on that. We did see... R3. That's going to be from that X flare here yesterday. Radiation storm. That, obviously, we talk about this a lot when we see that strong flaring. It affects the sunlit side of the Earth in terms of radio blackouts. So we did see a wide area blackout of high-frequency radio communication systems, loss of radio contact for about an hour on the sunlit side of the Earth. We're not talking about cell phones. We're talking about frequency range between 3 and 30 MHz and some other high-frequency radio communication and navigation systems. Low-frequency navigation signals degraded for about an hour. And, it's just very common. That happens when we get those strong flares. And obviously we're still seeing that, right, with the ongoing proton event right now. That's affecting areas across the polar regions. Well, watch for this. Last time we had a decent polar storm like this, as far as the radio blackouts, it lasted for days. So I'm kind of curious to see how this will react, if it's like this still, when we get the arrival of the CME. It could definitely allow potentially maybe some further stronger storming to take place here in terms of the auroras, and see how far they... it'd be interesting to see how far they go down, maybe into some lower states here. We'll have to keep an eye on that. All right, let's see what else we got. All right, I have a feeling we're going to be back sometime today to cover an X flare. I just have that strange feeling. It looks like that's going to take place here. So the question is here, with all this elevated space weather activity, right? I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. I guess it could. We could have a huge X flare with even a larger CME produced, but this is a pretty good event, right? So, where's all the earthquakes? Have we seen any big earthquakes out here? Any elevated activity? Any relationship that would show space weather activity to earthquake activity? Well, no. No, we haven't. Not even with the arrival of all the charged protons. I think, though, that the big test is going to be when the arrival of the CME hits us. I think that has more of an effect on the tectonic plates out here as it hits the magnetosphere, right? I know we kind of seen some events here recently. I've been keeping a tally of the space weather events and the earthquake activity related to that space weather event. So we'll have to keep a close eye on this as we get that G2, G3 class storm coming in here, that huge plasma cloud, that big CME that was produced yesterday. Once that arrives and hits Earth, we got to watch this very closely, see if we don't get any larger earthquake activity or maybe some type of elevated activity out here. But as of right now, the X flare from yesterday, the charged protons hitting the planet, has had absolutely no effect whatsoever on any type of earthquake activity in terms of elevated movement. If anything, it looks quieter today compared to the past couple days. So we'll watch it, right? We'll definitely be covering it. As far as earthquake activity in general here, I mean, it just looks like a typical day out here to start off on the West Coast. California, Southern California, this is all very typical movement out here. Let's check out the 2.5 and above. That almost eliminates all of them, except for one earthquake near the North Fork area. That's down here across the Sierra Nevada mountains outside of Fresno. 2.5, 21 kilometers deep. Aside from that, one earthquake yesterday way up in Northern California. But aside from the general small microquake activity, This movement here across the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault, a lot from yesterday, a little bit from today. Really no major uptick that I can see here across the California area. This region right here is the Clear Lake volcanic field. This is always swarming. In fact, if you look at the last 30 days of activity, it shows almost 2,000 earthquakes here. That's a lot, but it's very common to see that many earthquakes in this area. It's obviously an active region underneath, but there's power plants out here, hydrothermal operations that utilize those heated areas below to create steam and energy. There's one of the power plants. There's a good handful or more out here. I think there's probably 10 or 15, maybe even more hydrothermal plants that utilizes the heated areas below. And there's a whole process involved in that it produces earthquakes as well. There's I'm not going to go into the specifics of how they do it again. I've covered that in many times past, but if you're curious, look up the Clear Lake volcanic field geothermal plants. All right, rest of Northern California, one earthquake way up here. Looks like this morning, it looks like 15 kilometers deep for a 2.0. It's associated with the Cascadia subduction zone. Now, I know yesterday we have seen a little bit of tremor. Let me show you guys the tremor map out here. 309 epicenters of tremor into Northern California. So not really surprised to see a little bit of further earthquake activity upstream. This is deeper tremor activity into the subduction zone itself of the Cascadia, about 45 kilometers deep. And then, of course, as you get deeper, you get the melted areas, and then you get the volcanoes popping up here at the surface. So this is tremor occurring down deep there, but not quite deep into the melted layers underneath this region. When we see the tremor activity, I've noticed some strain building up here. You get these little earthquakes popping up, just like what we've seen here today. This one looks like a surface quake. Sometimes we'll see surface adjustment as well when a certain area of the Cascadia is strained and seeing that slippage, the tremor activity. 1.9, 23 kilometers deep, so a little bit out here today. Nothing really major going on in Oregon. Up into the Washington area, one lonesome earthquake there. Waterville, Washington area, pretty shallow earthquake out here, away from the mountains. 2.2. Yellowstone National Park, nothing showing up here, so let's just double check. Because I have some trust issues when it comes to the reporting out here. A lot of times there'll be a big time swarm going on and nothing showing up on the map. So I want to make sure, it's best to make sure. This activity, it looks like it has popped up again. I don't know exactly what it is. It is showing up here on a couple different stations. Now, it's a little odd looking. I don't know if it's snow. I don't know if it's ice. It has been awfully cold up there. This is overnight time frame. Let me double check the windy map here. I kind of want to see what the weather is like up there, because this is about the second or third time we've seen some of that weird activity. It does look like it's in the colder regions over here of Yellowstone National Park, and that's the current temperatures up there. Overnight, it's probably much colder. Yeah, I think those are ice quakes going on up there. And if you got the wind too, that can show an effect on the seismograph stations. Maybe like little spikes showing up as the snow and maybe ice blowing around up there. Those are some cold temperatures. So we're looking at 19 degrees, maybe even colder in certain areas. You throw in the wind gusts. Some areas it looked like it was blowing around that time as well. And that is probably what we're seeing right there. I think the USGS folks have covered this before, talking about these ice quakes. It definitely showed up here across this station as well. So I don't believe those are earthquakes, just some type of ice quakes, or the environmental noise around these stations here from the cold, the wind, the snow and ice blowing around. Yeah, if those were earthquakes in general, we would see a swarm pattern across all of these seismograph stations, but we're really not. I just want to cover that because a lot of times people asking, what is that noise that's showing up on other seismograph stations? It looks like earthquake, but those are definitely some type of weather-related events. Earthquakes out here, really not seeing too much in terms of earthquake activity across Yellowstone National Park in general. All right, let's go over and check out the rest of the states here, see what's going on. Texas area, nothing new here. Still seeing activity out in the oil fields up in Oklahoma as well. Slight amount of earthquake activity around Puerto Rico. Not seeing anything major going on. It's just, it looks like a typical day, right? So I think we can, I can't really completely rule out that X flares and large flares, don't produce earthquake activity or elevated events, but I think it's more associated with the CME, the ultimate CME activity that can stir up earthquakes. It's really interesting, so we'll have to watch that here in the coming days. Once that CME hits, I'll be paying super close attention. New Zealand, they're still having some earthquake activity out here. It's been that way for the past couple weeks. A lot of threes popping up and down the area here. I'm really surprised. Obviously we've seen a 4.8 or 5.6. Take your pick. USGS was showing it as a 4.8 here yesterday. Was it yesterday? Early in the morning hours, my time. So it's probably, 2 days from New Zealand time. But, yeah, there was 4.8. GeoNet servers reporting this as a 5.6. So that's decent earthquake activity out there. But we've been seeing just threes across the plate boundary here recently. A lot of activity, a lot of deeper movement quakes here. So I guess it's good that we're getting a bunch of little ones compared to one big one out here. But I still think there's potential of seeing some larger scale activity out there. It's gone awfully quiet out here across the Tonga area. Vanuatu, these are pretty deep earthquakes there across that area. We've seen a couple there yesterday. It's going to be this quake right here, the more recent one from last night, 4.9. That definitely a deeper earthquake out here north of Port Vila. Really no surface adjustment going on. So that leads me to believe that there's still some type of potential here in that quiet zone that we've been seeing here lately. For some larger scale surface adjustments. So we'll keep an eye on that area as well. Over here across the Sumatra region, it looks like we have seen a little advancement of earthquake activity overnight. Of course, this is a region that's seen a 6.4 here recently. But this activity is further to the west of where that 6-pointer struck. There's that 6.4. Very shallow earthquake out here. We don't normally see shallow activity here. But goodness, we did... yesterday, very early in the morning, my time, for that 6.4. Most of the time when you see quakes listed up here on the map, specifically in this area of the map, we're talking about deep earthquake activity. And we go and check out the historical data here. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here real quick. Deep earthquake activity below 300 kilometers. See these dark circles? That's what we're used to when we look at that area on the map. Over the Java Sea. So this is kind of an odd earthquake. Obviously, it looks like we have seen some 4s, maybe 5s out here historically, but we don't see a whole lot of shallow earthquake activity out here in that large of a magnitude in this area. Most of it, when we see the 6.4 or whatnot, going to be closer upstream to where the stress normally builds across this area. And the white are the more shallow earthquakes here. The light gray, kind of moderate depth there earthquakes, and yeah, just kind of an odd one there. So today we do have some further adjustment going on, but a little bit further to the west here, with a 5.3 being the latest earthquake there off the Sumatra coast. So we'll continue to watch that. It is a major subduction zone, and of course this area sits right about here. Got a lot of reinforcement going on here by the Australia plate, backed up by the Eurasia plate. Kind of in there in the crunch zone, not quite. The crunch zone is basically right in here where all the arrows tend to point. And they're always seeing earthquake activity. But the Java Trench over here, definitely a high stress zone in general as far as accumulated slip rate. All right, some older movement there from last night in the China area, Red Sea region. Looks like they've seen they thought they had another one last night, but I guess not. So there's 3 earthquakes there in the Red Sea, divergent zone out there. Those are all 4-pointers. 1 earthquake out here in the Greece area from yesterday. That's a 4.4. Let's check out the earthquake 3D globe, see what we got. Mostly older movement here on the globe. A couple of smaller circles there, white rings indicating some newer activity. The Atlantic Ocean, 5.5 or 5.0 there from this morning, I believe. Nothing being reported by the USGS here. Out into the Pacific, Hawaii. Got a small amount of earthquake activity up here in a trail fashion. Very shallow earthquake activity across the volcano, the Kilauea volcano. So let's just double check that and see what's going on here. Currently still sitting at a yellow and advisory. There's some of those earthquakes being reported. Nothing big. It's not a huge amount of earthquake activity, but it is newer and it's shallower. This is the inflation chart here. The electronic tilt meter at the Kilauea summit and the East Rift zone. Up and down pattern, but really no huge spike, no huge deflation event. It may look like it on the chart that there's a whole lot accumulating, but these are very small amounts compared to what we had seen back about February, 1st of February. We've seen a huge drop there at the system, at the summit, I mean. You can see that on the 5-year chart as well. And that magma got displaced from the summit off to the southwest rift zone and just kind of sitting down there in one of the plumbing systems. But right now, a little bit of stair-stepping event in terms of inflation, but this is not all that big. All right, Iceland. Let's check out Iceland, see what's going on here. We're still looking at an eruption going on. As far as the current lava vents here, they look just as active as what they did yesterday. We're still watching this long duration event, 8 days now, I think. I think it's been about 8 days, 7-8 days of this event, of this current ongoing eruption, and I see no signs of it slowing down here. We're looking at a free flow of magma from the deeper areas with no more accumulation under the ground. Normally in the past couple eruptions here, we watched the eruption here pop off for a day or two, and then it will stop, accumulate underneath the Svart-Singi region, and then perform another eruptive event about 30 days later. Well, this one's a lot different. This is just free-flowing from the deeper levels to the reservoir, and then free-flowing from there up to the surface. So this could go on and on and on for a little while. It'd be interesting to watch here and see how it plays out. The latest updated information here from the Icelandic Met Office. Basically, they're more concerned, it looks like, for gas pollution. It's going to be the volcanic gases. There is obviously accumulation of the lava on top of previously deposited lava, and you can see the eruptive vents here. Grindavik off in the background. Really no further advancement towards the town or out to sea. It's just kind of stacking on top of each other here in terms of that lava accumulation. So fairly steady is the key word. No decline, no elevated activity. Land rise in the area has been mild since the eruption began on the 16th. So goodness, we're just looking at a long duration event, and the lava is continuing to stack up on one another, which is good. I mean, it's just kind of building this area here. You can kind of see it over the past couple days in the time lapse. Eventually, though, if that continues, it may find its way further down or away from the area in a totally new direction as far as the flow of lava goes. But it's going. Just kind of an interesting event here. We'll continue to watch that and report back on it, but steady as she goes, I guess, is the key word up there. All right, earthquake activity, anything going on right now? Doesn't look like it. Little spike there on Southern California at the Barrett Station. That's going to be right down here. It looks like a little spike. That's a very small earthquake, 1.3. Again, no major earthquake activity, no elevated earthquake activity following the space weather event for now. Let's see what happens when the CME hits us on the 25th. So we'll get a little bit more detailed forecast here from Kevin, I think, once he updates this. But this will definitely change because they're calling for a G3 class storm. There's still a big-time elevated threat here for some X-flare activity. That's of importance because that is definitely facing us in terms of these sunspots, these massive sunspots. Very complex sunspot 3615, I think, is the one to watch here. This hasn't produced an X-flare yet. The X-flare yesterday was from this spot. But look at that. Those are the big ones. This is the one that can produce probably something bigger than even the X-flare that popped off weeks ago from old Sunspot 3590. So we'll keep an eye on that. This one looks like almost like a Carrington type of sunspot, Carrington event sunspot. That's a whole nother topic. But anyway, folks, have a good one. Weather real quick. Let me check out the weather. Almost forgot it. We do have a chance here of some thunderstorm activity out here across the California area. And generally all over the place, it looks like. Really not seeing anything major in terms of severe weather. Tomorrow's outlook, a little bit more enhancement across areas of the southern plains. Beautiful state of Kansas and Oklahoma under some slight risk category. Looks like a 5% chance for tornado probability. Some wind and some hail events out there as well. So just a heads up for tomorrow's severe weather. We'll check that out a little bit later on tonight, though. There's our storm system out here in California. It's cold. We go from 70 to 80. And now we're sitting at 54 degrees here outside my house on my personal weather station. So it's a little chilly. But I guess we got to deal with it for a little bit. I'm kind of ready for spring, but also like the rain. It looks like we got some more rain coming in midweek next week. And it's a couple decent low-pressure systems here that's going to be spinning off the California coast, bringing the entire state some wet weather once again. And April 8th here, look at this, April 8th. Now, this is about Thursday night or so with the UTC time. But it does look like, for now, high pressure building in out here across a good portion of the country now. April 8th, of course, is going to be the eclipse, total eclipse, solar total eclipse. A lot of people planning for this. A huge disappointment if this is all cloud cover and rain. But right now, high pressure does look to be building in. We'll continue to check this daily to see how these weather models trend, see if they're going to trend towards the continued high pressure dominance out here around the total solar eclipse date. April 8th will be the date. I can't wait. I will be out there in Texas. Even if it's, I don't know. If it's cloudy, it's a long drive out there. I don't know. I'll probably still go out there even if it's cloudy and rainy. I prefer to have open, clear skies, but we'll continue to watch that and report back on the weather for that region as we get closer to that date. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Enjoy your Saturday. I will be back here if something major happens. If not, then I will be back here later tonight with the Saturday night update. Have a good one. We'll catch you guys back here soon.